are doing something new this year. I taught this course for almost 10 years, I think. And Jim's got this hobby, I'm happy to say. He's got the equipment, and he's going to be filling each class. We already have 2 people missing tonight's class. Some of you have said you're going to miss another class here and there, and it was always a struggle in the past. Now we'll be able to send out a link to each class so that even if you're here and you want to review something I said, or you've got husband and wife arguing about what I said, you can go back and get it on tape and see. And if you miss a class, you can watch the class. So that will be nice to have people who miss a class. I got a chance to talk to most of you when I handed out books to everybody. I left my notebook back here just a moment. When I handed out textbooks and so forth, so I learned a lot about some about each of you, but I'm going to ask everybody the same question so you can be thinking about this. I'm going to ask each of you to give me a brief answer, and that is either what brought you to this class or what are you hoping to learn? What's the 1, 2, maybe 3 things that you think you really need to learn? I'm curious to hear what people do. Usually expect. So this is America's, I'll ask everybody that question in a moment. You can be thinking about that. So this is America's voting course. For those of you who haven't met me, what I tell everybody is, if you've looked at the textbook and browsed through it, you probably realize, boy, oh boy, we cover a ton of stuff this morning. Problem is, we don't have a ton of time, and we only cover each subject that deep. So we move really, really fast. There's an expectation on my part that you folks will do the work that's needed, read the book ahead, read the chapters ahead, read the outline. I ask you to read ahead before you get to class, so that when you see what happens up here, it'll make some sense and you might have some questions ready. I'm asking you to do the homework questions, which are multiple choice. Do the homework. You don't have to, maybe mark them on you, but there are people who either took the class in some form years ago, or just decide, well, I'm an experienced voter and I could practically teach the class, and they just come in and they sit and they watch and they're attentive and they attend all 5 nights, but they don't do any homework and they don't read ahead, and they're really good voters, and they all manage to fail the course in the last night. All function, because there's a lot of detail there. So do yourself a favor and read ahead and have your questions. One of the things I try to do is by asking you to do this stuff, there's a lot of material as we go through this that you're going to see I'm going to skip. Even tonight, almost immediately one of these I get into, for example, the shape of vote outs. And there's a slide in here, and you may have seen it already if you read chapter 1, that describes what a round bottom vote looks like, and a flat bottom vote looks like. You know what? We don't need to spend time going over things like that. They're pretty self-explanatory. There's parts of it that I presume you can figure out what the section of the book is talking about. I won't waste time on it. I won't waste your time. I'll get on to the important stuff. But just because I skip stuff and gloss over stuff and say, this part's easy, you can learn this on your own, there may well be questions about that stuff at the final exam. So just because I go skip by it doesn't mean it isn't important. It just means you can learn it without taking that time. Yes, the tests, you have to get 80% on the 50 question test, and you have to get 80% on the mass law book that I gave you. 8 out of 10 questions, and you have to score 80% on those. We used to, 20 years ago, sort of allow people to be correct on the last night, give you your results the last night, give you your certificates, and people were missing a couple of questions at the end. We used to say, well, go back and look at question number 8 again, type of thing. We can't do that anymore because the certificate will give you, it gives you a card that gets you a license in the state. So we are responsible for saying to people, you've taken the course, you've gotten the card, yeah, you know what you're doing. So we, you know, 78% is not passed, 80%. We have responsibilities. We have a responsibility for me, the teacher, club that we belong to, for our whole organization. We have a responsibility to the state of Massachusetts, who is going to be out there patrolling the waters. They need to know that, yes, you know what you're doing. I have a responsibility for all the other boats out there in the water, but you know who top. You know what you're doing. And lastly, I have there's a responsibility that I take for the people who take it with it. That you will learn something about an idea or the right way to do things, so that everybody goes out and real low is a good day and comes back safe. So take that test very seriously. But in the same way, yes, I have an expectation that I hope you'll do your part too and read the book, the chapters. So who are we? We are America's Boating Club. We've been around for over 100 years. We were established in 1914, and for over 100 years we were known as United States Power Squadrons. 100 years ago, the name meant something. Last 50 years, it was like, what the hell does that mean? We finally, in the past decade, got a DBA, doing business as America's Boating Club. It's very much more describes who we are. We're all volunteers. We teach people how to use their recreational boats safely, to have confidence after they take our courses, and therefore they go out there on the water. That's what it's all about. Boils down to a phrase we've used in the past: boating is fun. Yes, you will. That's what it's about. You can take courses like, first of all, I want to tell you, I want to give everybody congratulations for taking a course like this. You have a smart 10% of boaters out there. Not all the boaters don't take the course. And if they take the course because, let's say, they go out of water and they need a license, then what they will do is they will often attend a Saturday only 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Class. Okay, thank you. We'll learn it. I know. 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and somebody will teach you just enough to get through the test at 4:30. Sure enough, they walk up with a certificate. I don't know if they're safe or not. I'm not sure whether 2 weeks later they sat down at the test or they passed it. So we take a little longer, and I do slow down the things that I've learned through the years are very important. Life jackets, fueling the boat properly, carrying a VHF radio with you, and the things that people always have problems with, like anchoring and so forth. We'll slow down for those things, but we'll go very fast for other parts. If you find that I am using lingo, jargon that you don't understand, I very much want this to be a give and take. I'll be asking questions of you folks, and if you have questions for me, if it's something you don't understand, you're here because you need an education. You don't know enough about boating, so ask the question so that you can help. Okay? All right, we'll try to take a break at about 8 o'clock, just for 5 minutes. There are restrooms literally right behind that wall right there. Up the door to the left, and find them right there, and we'll try to be done by 9 o'clock. Someone's coming to pick you up around 9, I presume? Yeah. All right, we'll try to be done. So we're running late, you've got to go. And if anybody's running late, I'm going to try to get started every night right at 6:30. And if you're late, that's fine. I understand traffic in Boston and all that stuff, and that's okay. Just come on in and grab us. Okay? So let's go around quickly, and hopefully you've had a chance to think about it a little bit. You made the mistake of sitting right up beside me. What do you hope to get out of a class like this?
Basic safety, just to ensure that I've done my part to learn some of the main things about
you and I didn't get a chance to chat much. That I forgot. Do you have a boat now, or you?
Well, we do. We do have a boat. Recently, the power boat.
You folks, what are you hoping for? What's the 1 or 2 things you're hoping to get from class like this?
We're becoming new boat owners, so make sure we come up with doing correctly and safely.
As I recall, your experience on boats is that you are a very good golfer.
Yes.
So you need a class like
Right, I don't think the clubs will make the rules.
you two are in law, you're religious, are outlaws right there too.
Yeah, I'm looking also for, etiquette.
That's something sort of.
Yeah, rules of road safety there.
And, oh, I got a tough time with the names. James, that's right. Yeah, we got a fast one for James. James, what are you hoping for? What would you hope to work out with?
Basic practices. Navigation, food system.
Okay. So Mark, how about you?
A new boat owner, have boat down in, Nantucket Sound, so looking for navigational, safety, general rules of the road.
Donna, so how about you?
Just to be comfortable and, operate the sailboats safely and just get comfortable with it.
Your sailors?
Sailors.
That's an extra 10 points. I
Um,
gave myself away on that. Like I said.
Same thing, like safety and like navigation, how to read like charts and that kind of stuff.
Okay, yeah, we'll go over some of that in this class. Okay. Michael?
Yeah, I guess I'll echo what everyone else said. Definitely safety and etiquette, and also I grew up with people taking the charge of leading the boat, so feeling comfortable being the person that's leading the
Do you feel comfortable or uncomfortable?
I want to feel more.
You want to. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm Melissa, it's my brother,
Right.
Michael, and our parents recently bought a new boat, and so kind of like what Michael was saying, he would definitely help out more than I would, so I think I have more catching up to do in terms of the helping out with safety and everything around the boat.
Thanks.
I just kind of want to get more comfortable at the helm, kind of navigating stuff.
What kind of, I take it mom and dad has a boat,
Yeah,
and what is it?
27-foot flatfin.
Okay. The other thing that James is here for is that, you may or may not know, what we learned is that Massachusetts and Maryland, like the point, does not require licensing for types on boats in Massachusetts, but there are licensing requirements for anybody between the ages of 12 and 16 to take a boat out by themselves without supervision. That's this test that they get from the state. And of course, they have to get a permit from that. Rolled out, which may be. So I told them already, I said, the best way to do that is the hasty exam. So the options are thrown down for all the adults. And James.
I'm Mike.
You're Mike.
Yeah, I'm Mike.
You are Mike. That's right. I
I
carried away with the Jameses.
grew up working in a marina. I've hung around with people who totally impressed me in their sailing abilities all my life. And now I want to own my own boat. And prior experiences tell me there's so much I don't know. I want to create a list of what I don't know here, and perhaps take more courses going forward.
So, like your experience is closest to mine. I had grown up. So yes, in case you didn't figure it out, I'm a sailor. I have a 32-foot, 40-year-old sailboat, fiberglass that I keep on most of the day. I use it mostly for day sailing. It's rigged so I can single-hand it, but it's my vacation home. My wife I describe as a good sport, not a good sailor. She'll go up for a day, but she's not interested in the overnight. So I gather up my crew from this club and go off last summer, for example, I got something checked out and I thought it was mine. Spent 5 weeks up in Maine. So I could travel, used a lot. But I grew up with my father being a sailor. My father had been part of this organization years ago. And being around him, I suffered from the hubris of saying to myself, well, I don't need to everything. But somewhere along the way, as I finally got serious about buying, being below boat for 25 years and looking for one seriously, I decided maybe it would be smart to take a refresher course. And I went in and saying to myself, I sat there for 5, 6 straight nights. In fact, Don was one of my teachers back then. And I sat there every single night, sitting there. I didn't. I had to carry that on the boat. Oh, is that what that way means? All night, every night. It was just an eye opener. So yes, we often get this, people who need a refresher course, perhaps like Mike and myself and others. It sounds like we have a lot of people here in the room who are pretty new to boating. But this course is excellent for all of those things. And I think you learn those. Okay, I'd like to read something to you. And I can tell you how long I've been. I think I cut this out when I was helping Don way back years ago, when he was the lead with another fellow and I was helping out. Because I noticed that the date on this is December of 2005. And I cut it out of Soundings magazine. And it was written, the editor's letter to start the magazine way back then. And I'm not going to read this whole thing. I'm just going to read part of it. And it really sort of focuses and summarizes what this class is going to be all about. He says, more and more boating mishaps come across my desk every day than I care to count. Good seamanship encompasses experience, judgment, prudence, planning, awareness, and a host of other skill and competencies. You can never know too much, and you can never be too prepared. One of the most competent boatmen I know is Bill Brogdon, a retired Coast Guard captain who is the commanding officer of several ships, including a 378-foot cutter. People don't realize that, he says, people don't realize that running a boat is a full-time job. You think you can do it all, but then you miss seeing someone until you're too close. There are 10 different distractions that can come up. The solution is harder than it sounds. Stay alert and be prepared for the worst situations that you can reasonably expect to encounter. Suppose the GPS goes belly up, Brogdon asks, or it gets foggy or really rough. You have to have thought them through beforehand, before they jump on top of you. A little forethought so lost. We've also talked about the problems caused by speed. And this next paragraph was written in 2005. And you can multiply what he says in here by a factor of 3 these days, in the last 15 years, 18 years. We've talked about the problems caused by speed, particularly to new boaters. The challenges faced by skippers who have a 40-knot vessel and a 20-knot lane. The big jump in speed is what we've seen in the last decade that's made staying focused even more critical. A whole lot more people have gotten into trouble from going too fast than going too slow. Running your boat at speed suitable for the conditions is an important element of seamanship. Again, it's easier said than done. Finally, be aware that what you do in the water may affect someone else. So watch your wake, your radial manners, your speed. Good seamanship is also showing consideration for the other guy. That sort of summarizes what the next 5 minutes is. Huh? So let's get started and let's hope everybody will learn a lot. I did. There you go. All right. Now, dimensions of a boat. When you're at the boat show and you're looking at a boat and they tell you the length of a boat, realize that when they tell you the length, what they're talking about is the overall length. If it has, it's just good information to know. It isn't the whole length. If it's got a extension on the front with a roller for the anchor, that's taken into account. That adds to the length. If it's got a swim platform on the back, that's 3 feet. They add that to it. So you think, oh, I just bought a 36-foot boat, but actually the from the bow to the stern may be only 31 feet. But when you go to tie up at a dock in a rental, it's like they're going to charge you for 36 feet. Water line length is just what you think. The beam is the width. Bridge clearance meaning, okay, if you're going to get under bridges going up the Charles River, yeah, what is your bridge clearance? What's the total height? We're going to be talking about how boats move, outboards, stern drive, which is inboard motor, but the out drive of an outboard, and inboards with a shaft drive, and then finally the jet drives. In PWC, personal watercraft, we may call them jet skis or sea-doos or what have you, but those are brand names. Personal watercraft is the official name, which use an impeller to blow water out of that. These rarely come up on the test, but occasionally. So sailboats, have a head sail, sometimes called a jib, as well as a mainsail. Piece of wood that moves the rudder is called a tiller. The running rigging is the stuff that moves, the stuff that's attached to the sails. The standing rigging are the shrouds, which, oops, hit the wrong button. Which are the shrouds which run off the side of the mast, and the stays of the front and the back. So there's a forestay and an aft stay, and then shrouds on the side, they attach to the mast, they don't move, they just keep the mast up. Sailboats will either have a keel or a centerboard that goes up and down, it just keeps boats from sliding in the water, and then typically a rudder on the back to steer the boat. All boats are going to fall into either displacement, planing, or combination. Typically, sailboats, most are going to be displacement, they just push water aside. Planing boats, an awful lot of the smaller power boats are designed with flat bottoms, and this, the classic example is a Boston whaler, designed to get up and bounce across the top of the water. Larger boats are usually a combination, and they'll have some sort of like a V hull. We'll see it on some of the shapes here in a second. So that it gives a combination. It's very sharp to cut through the water and give steering up here and flattens out in the stern to let it rise up out of the water. We won't take time on that. You guys can figure that out. That's in the book. How many people here, put your hands up, are planning on buying a boat, hopefully in the next year? Okay, so at least 3 of you. Obviously, the size, design, and construction materials have a lot to do with the seaworthiness. All logical items here. We're going to talk about what freeboard is. Well, let's talk about it right now. When you hear the term freeboard, let's talk about what that means in a boat. Freeboard is the spot. You go to page 3 and look at the lower diagram on page 3. They illustrate freeboard. Freeboard is the spot, the lowest spot along the edge of the boat, the gunwale, where water would come in. If I push this boat straight down into the water, your boat that you own, my boat, where would the water first flow over the side and into the boat? If you push it down far enough, that it would be the shortest distance from the water line up to the gunwale. That is considered your freeboard. It's the minimum distance. So when somebody says the boat's got a lot of freeboard, the boat doesn't have much freeboard, they're just talking about how seaworthy it is, how high are the sides to keep the water on the outside. Okay. The stability and weight should be concentrated low on the boat. Boats can be made today out of tons of things. Fiberglass by far the most popular, but concrete, steel, aluminum, and obviously wood. And now a whole bunch of things like carbon fiber if you get the money for it. Let's go down here. Amazing how many people get in here, and I was one of them, in spite of all my years in the water, who didn't quite understand this particular situation. How a boat steers. You're at your power boat, and you're out in Boston Harbor, you're at the wheel, and the outboard, the 75 horse or the 200 horsepower, and you want to make a right-hand turn, and you turn the wheel, and you think you made a nice clean turn just as if you're steering the car. Sure, things like that. Turn the wheel, the boat went that way. But if you were overhead with the drone and you were looking at what the boat actually did, because boats all steer not from the front, like with a car, there's steering wheels up there. The steering is coming from either a rudder in the back, if you've got an inboard, or from your outboards, directing the thrust at the back. So what's happening when you steer the boat is that you have to push the stern in one direction so that your bow goes in the other direction. So think about it, and you end up with a pivot point, which you may not realize is about a third of the way back from the bow. Sailboats have them, power boats have them. Outboards, inboards, they all pivot around the spot like that. So the stern moves left in order for the boat to move right. And a much larger arc is described by the stern. And the bow moves on a smaller arc. This is why, catch up on the book here. So we're talking about this on page 9, and I think this is about an illustration here. There it is. So if the boat is going to the left, what happens here is that if you were turning a big donut and you could look at it from above, this forward portion is moving along this inner circle, but the starboard rear corner, aft corner, is running around that. You're making a big donut. So when is this important? This becomes really important when you're trying to dock your boat at the marina. You're pulling into a dock, you're trying to pull in between slips, or you're just coming down the end and you want to make a U-turn in a tight area. And you say, well, I'm going to treat it like I'm in a car, and I'm going to stay way over to that side and then make my turn and leave me lots of room. And the trouble is, you stay way over near the docks over there, and you start to turn, all of a sudden, your back port corner of the boat is banging the docks. It's because your stern has to move one way so that your bow can go. If you are tied up to a dock and you simply try to go forward and turn the wheel, well, the stern keeps hitting the dock all the way down, and the bow doesn't go that way because the stern can't turn. That's why. Everybody understand? If you don't understand, so the pivot point is a third of the way back from the bow. If you then back your boat up and you decide to turn the boat, well, the pivot point then, oops. The pivot point then moves, if you're going backwards, about 2/3 of the way back, about a third of the way from the stern. How do rudders work? Well, rudders on boats that have inboard engines are set behind the prop. Prop pushes the water from the front of the boat to the back, pushes it by the rudder, turn the rudder, and again, the prop wash, keep hitting that instead of, the prop wash hits, if you can see the rudder turn slightly, hits that side of the rudder. It's not hitting the left side, and so it pushes the rudder and the stern of the boat that way, and the boat goes right. If you turn the rudder the other way, the left side of the rudder would get more force on it. It would push the stern to the right and the boat would go left. So the prop doesn't move, the prop stays in place. That's fixed, but the rudder will push the stern of the boat. So, left and right. And finally, jet skis, that brand name, the personal watercraft. They suck water in from underneath. They put it through essentially a propeller, but when sucked inside this tube, we call it an impeller, but you can see that propeller shape, and it sucks water in. The impeller fires it out the back, and you steer the nozzle. And so that provides the thrust. And you're going to see a good illustration of, okay, what happens to the stern when you turn the wheel. Notice how that stern swings to the right. So that's exactly what happens. And pivot point. I sat there the first time John illustrated that condition. Oh, that's what I get thoughts. What I don't know. We see there are occasionally parts in here that I would like you to highlight in your book. As we go through this, I will try to tell you areas of the book to highlight that are likely to show up on the exam. Go back to page 2, right-hand column, exterior of the boat, third of the way down. They talk about the transom of the boat. So the back of the boat is called the stern. But where a lot of people say, well, what's the difference between the transom and the stern? Well, the transom is the outside back of the stern where you put the name of the boat. That's the transom. So distinction between the transom and stern. Just below that, they talk about the upper edge or rail of the boat is, you look at the word, it looks like gunwale. Well, if you spend centuries saying gunwale, eventually it gets slurred into gunwale. And so basically, it's this purple line on the boat here. It's that top edge rim of your boat, running around the side of the boat. That's the gunwale. Okay. Oh, another thing, that term that you will see a lot of, go to page 8. Then if you're reading articles or reading about boats or reading about water lines and so forth, third boat down with the V bottom, they have a little notation there in the bottom left-hand corner of the chine. The chine is where the bottom of the boat meets the side of the boat. Now on that brown V bottom boat, it's really clear, okay? And I don't know that the word chine is going to show up on the test, but it's just a term that can be confusing to people. If you go to the top picture, the red boat, the round bottom, you say, okay, so where's the chine? Well, it's tough to put your finger on it because it's a smooth slope. It isn't as defined as on that one. The other term that you hear a lot, you go, what the hell are they talking about? The fourth one down, the purple boat, which is a V bottom, and they talk about the dead rise angle. You'll hear about a dead rise angle of 18 degrees or 22 degrees or 27 degrees. And it just has to do with how much of a V bottom the boat has at its maximum. Usually they take that at the stern, I think, but they'll, wherever they measure the dead rise angle, it's just, that's how it breaks. It's how much of a V hull, this is the hull, how much of an angle is there. Okay? And usually it's somewhere on a deep V hull, somewhere between 20 and 30 degrees, and just has to do with how much does it cut through the water. Those aren't terms that necessarily show up on the test, but will have to do with things that can be confusing if you see these terms in different colors. Also, many pages in there on types of boats. That's just good again for when you've heard these descriptions of boats or read about them for sale. It's all no picture, and you're trying to describe the boat. You say, what does that boat look like? That will give you an idea of what a lot of the boats look like. Outboard directed thrust. I think most of you in the small boats have outboards, which work just like the personal watercraft. You can see they show the engine turned a bit, the thrust going off in this direction, the stern's going this way on that arrow, the bow's going that way. Straight ahead and then the opposite going on. Okay. You're up there buying a boat. Required safety equipment. Now we get quickly into the nitty-gritty. Coast Guard says there's a lot of stuff you have to have in your boat. And what they do is you look at the list carefully of what you're supposed to carry on the boat. It's things that will are likely to ensure that if you have them, you're much more, if something goes wrong, you're much more likely to take control of the situation and get home safe. It's amazing the things that the Coast Guard does not require to go on a boat. Sometimes they just should. We'll go over the recommended. Okay, real critical is knowing your boat's class. That has a lot to do with the equipment that you have to have on your boat. So looking at page 19, anybody here, their primary boat under 16 feet long? Anybody own any boat that's under 16 feet long? That's not an engine. You do. 2 of them, 3 of them. Okay. So the rules for under 16 feet are a little easier, but you're not exempt. I'm guessing most of you, put your hands up again, you have a boat 16 to 26 feet, put your hands up. Okay. Over 26 feet?
Actually, question,
Yes,
is that like overall?
yes. Yeah, that's exactly it, yes. Swim platform house. Yeah, that's what it's. Yeah, well, so it's important for you to know exactly what your boat length is, because it has to do with how many, if you've got a motor, how many fire extinguishers you have to carry and so forth. One of the most important sentences in here, and it's sort of a repeat of that article I was reading, the very first sentence, you as a skipper are responsible for the safety of your boat and the people aboard. Even if you're not on the wheel. If your boat is out there, you're on your boat, if you turn the wheel over to somebody else, and they go smack into somebody else. Yeah, those guys are gonna come looking for the person who put the wheel, but they're also gonna come. You are ultimately responsible. When you go rent a boat, somebody, you go on vacation, you rent a boat, it's up to you to make sure the right safety equipment is on the boat. If something happens and the Coast Guard gets involved, and they find out you're missing fire extinguishers, you're missing life jackets. You can say, well, I rented it, I'm not responsible. Yes, you are responsible, for making sure that stuff is on the boat. Mark, did you have a question?
Nope.
Okay. So, federal lake regulations place recreation goes into one of four groups, which we just talked about, all the way up to 40 feet and up. First thing, one of the biggest things is going to be life jackets. This is where we're going to slow down. One of the, I've told some of you this already. We get through 5 nights, and a month later, the only things that you guys really can remember is, boy, did we spend a lot of time on life jackets, and I always wear my life jacket since I took that course. Bingo, that's one. 2, if when you fuel up your boat, slow down, take your time, and you do it right, so that you do not end up on the 6 o'clock news the next day. Do it safely. Absolutely fantastic. And then lastly, you will take a long piece of equipment that isn't required, and that's a VHF. If you guys come out of it with nothing more, remember that. Life jackets, fuel safely, carry the VHF all the time. This will be a good class. Life jackets, clearly, one of the most important things you can do. How many guys here are males? Put your hands up if you're a guy. Good. You all know who guys are. 18 and over who drown. First of all, 80% of us are legally drunk. So that's what the alcohol consumption. And 90% of those who drown aren't wearing a life jacket. They only work when you wear it. So my Santa Claus bag here is all kinds of things. Okay. Life jacket requirements. Coast Guard approved life jackets. And when you buy them, be sure that they have U.S. Coast Guard approval number on them. It's hard to find one without it, but be sure that they have that. You have to have one life jacket on board for everybody, but the life jackets have to be the correct size. So if you've got all of the life jackets, and you get your nieces and nephews who are 5 and 6 years old, well, clearly they're not too fit. Make sure the life jackets fit. Has to be serviceable. Everything has to work. If it's got snaps, they have to work. If it's got a zipper, it has to work. Can't be torn. It can be stained, it can be faded. As long as you can still read the label, you're fine. I don't care if it's dirty. As long as it'll keep you afloat and everything works. It has to be readily available. Biggest mistake you can make this year is to decide, I'm going to go get a 4-pack of life jackets, and they come each in their own cellophane wrap, and they come in this nice neat thing with a zipper on it, 4-pack, and I'm going to store that way up forward so it doesn't get dirty. Then the life jackets don't do any good unless they're immediately available for people. As we're going to find out, kids under 12, when the boat's underway, have to be wearing a life jacket. There's more details on that in general. Kids under 12, when the boat's moving, I've got a boat underway, and then you untie from a dock. And then you drop the mooring, even if you're out in the middle of the harbor and the boat's engine stop and you're just drifting and fishing. That boat is underway. Not tied to a dock, not in the mooring. You want that underway. It's small enough. It's a anchor. There's other stuff. Leave an anchor. Yep. Once you leave the dock. Anchor. No, I guess not. Your anchor here, that's not underway. Yes, that's all boats. That is the definition of a boat underway. There are rules that apply when you're underway. There are rules that apply when you are docked or moored. So these are rules that apply underway. You're just drifting, then you're not. And the life jacket should be designed for the proper activity. If you're on a jet ski or something like that can go a whole lot of miles an hour, you have to have the right life jacket. So let's get into some of this. This stuff is this whole section, the next probably 10 pages of the book. Okay, this is a section you should really know well for the last of this. Life jackets inside and out. First of all, wear a life jacket before leaving the dock. Distribute life jackets, have everybody try them on, adjust the straps, make sure they fit. The little kids can conduct a lift test to ensure they fit. I'll talk about that in a minute. Wear it. If you don't wear it, make sure you label it and keep it close and attach a whistle and a light. First sign of trouble, wear it. Putting it out on the water isn't difficult. It's standing there and false. So let's slow down and take a look at this. I just talked about the fact that the life jackets have to be available. The Coast Guard, the harbor masters, state police have boats, all kinds of law enforcement agencies are out there on the water. And it's unlikely but possible that you might get pulled over just for a safety inspection. Coast Guard will do it when they got a new group of kids that they're breaking in and trained. They'll pull you over and bring them on board and do a vessel safety check. And just to train the kids. And so they'll go through all the stuff that you're supposed to have on board and make sure that it's all up to date and up to stuff and you've got everything. And God forbid that they would have pulled you over because they think you're doing something wrong. In either case, what's likely to happen is the Coast Guard comes aboard and they'll look at Don and say, "You the captain?" And you'll say, "Yes." And they'll say, "Stand down. Captain, stand down." And it means just what you need as the captain. It means sit down and shut up. Then they're going to turn to one of your crew that's on board, and they're going to say, "Where are the life jackets?" And if Don's crew doesn't know where the life jackets are, because Don hasn't shown him where the life jackets are, Don's butt is grass and the Coast Guard's the lawnmower. And they're going to mow him down. And he's going to get written up in big time. That's almost one of, invariably the first thing is they're going to say to your crew, "Show me the life jackets." And they better be alone where they are. Let me ask a question. Almost everybody here drives a car. We have one who isn't there yet, but I bet everybody else has a license. So what I want everybody to do, if you've got a license and you can drive a car, put your hand up and keep it up. Put your hand up and keep it up. If you don't wear seat belts, put your hand up. So all of you say you wear seat belts. This is excellent. Okay, put your hands up. So why do you wear seat belts? You put them on because you know you're going to get in an accident that day. So I'm going to put my seat belt on because I'm going down the center of town and I'm going to that not because you think an accident might happen. That's why they're called accidents. If you wear your seat belts, then when you go on your boat, you're going on for a day of fun. And I'm going to ask you to be, pardon my French, you don't know this, but give your crew some confidence in what you're doing. And take a half hour, especially if they've never been on your boat before, and go through a initiation, a familiarization, and one of the things I always tell them, I do this with everybody, I teach these courses, And I want you to know where stuff is in case something goes wrong. But I can't be showing directions to people. If something goes wrong, you gotta know what to do. And so the first thing I do is I show everybody where life jackets are, and I have everybody try on life jackets and fit them to them. And this is one of the life jackets. I have three of these on board. I carry them because they're easy to fit and they're lightweight and they're thin and they do what I need. And they have nose in the back, 1, 2, and 3. And so I have them try them on, I have them fit them, and I say, good. Now we're going to take them off. I hope we don't need them. I hope we don't have such a rough day out here on the water that we need to put them on. But if we do, you're wearing number 3, you're wearing number 2, you're wearing number 1, and here we're going to put them back in this locker right here, which is in the cockpit. So they've tried them on, they know where they are, and they know which one is theirs. So that if the need arises, they can throw them and put them on quickly. Do that first of all with your crew every time. Not to try on the life jackets. Just say, so if something goes wrong. You should also then be telling them what to expect when they're out in the boat, where you want them to sit, how fast the boat goes, what time of the day you like this to be the weather and so forth, where you want the cooler stove, that sort of thing. And we're going to find out we should have a VHF radio. Somebody else should be taught how to use the radio in case of emergency. If you use the captain as incapacitated. If you're my age and you have a heart attack or a stroke and you can't talk, they need to call help, they need to know how to use it. And also somebody on the boat should know how to start the boat, put it into gear, try it, steer it a little bit, slow it down, stop it, put it in reverse. So at least, again, if something happens and they need to make the boat go, they know how to do it. Go through those minimum things with it. And then say, okay, good. Now we're going to go have a nice day in the water. Now that can sound like, well, I'm going to play Debbie Downer. Well, I have fun and go fishing and enjoy the sunshine. Yeah, but also your crew just learned, but you're careful. You're worried about them. You want them to get back careful, back home today, and you respected them enough to say, look, just in case something stupid happens. And I always tell them, I will. Seatbelts in my car. I hope you do too. For that reason, I'm going to share this stuff. You're going to have a good day, but if something goes wrong, now you know a little bit about it. So start your day that way, every single time. Take a few minutes to do it. So that's why I say distribute them, try them on, adjust the straps. Little kids, you put a youngster into a life jacket this size. This one has crotch straps. Come from the back, go underneath, come up the front. Well, then it will pass the lift test. Without those straps, one of the things you should do with a kid is, okay, it's supposed to be the right size. They snap into it, stand behind them, grab it, and lift. You might find out that it isn't fitting them properly, and they go, whoop, and the next thing you know, you got the life jacket, and they slid right out of it. Well, if they fell in the water, they're going to slide right out of the life jacket. So do the lift test. And if you're buying life jackets for the 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old, make sure you get them with the straps. And the other thing is great to have is a strap up here that if they fall in the water, you can reach over and grab the strap. Same goes for Hoochie, Fido. Notice the handle on top for just that reason. Grab Fido and pull it right out of the water. So there's life jackets for all kinds of purposes. There should be a whistle attached to the life jacket. And my life jackets all carry a whistle. Now, best not to have a whistle like a police whistle with a ball in it. With the ball in water, will get stuck and won't make any noise. So you want one, a little whistle. That will carry a long distance, and it's a heck of a lot better than shouting. Because your voice will get lost in a hurry, but you can keep blowing on a whistle to get somebody's attention. So make sure there's a whistle attached to every life jacket that you have on board. There are some life jackets designed strictly for, this is all foam, you can tell. I don't know if this was designed to be for, it says cut and jump. I don't know how I acquired this. I certainly didn't buy it. But there are specialized life jackets with extra large opening for paddling. If you're on the kayak, there are ones that are designed, we're going to see them here with extra straps for if you're on a jet ski, so that if you hit the water, it's much more likely to stay put and not torn off your body if the wave doing 30 miles an hour. And time and time again during this class, we're going to be talking about when the going gets nasty. First rule is get everybody into life jackets. Okay, so what kind of life jackets? We're on page 21. Choose the life jackets. Number one, choose life jackets that people will wear. They're no good if people won't wear it. So for example, these type 1 life jackets are the ones that the Coast Guard guys use. And if you're out 20 miles out or you're out in the storms and so forth, that's the one you want. They've got tons of foam, tons of flotation, and they're wonderful, but they're uncomfortable to set. But if you fall in the water, it's just the one you want. But for most of us, too big, too bulky. The good thing about them is that even if you are unconscious, it will, there's so much flotation on the front and not on the back, it will roll you over onto your back. And then that big pillow is behind your head, and it will keep your head up. And even if you're unconscious, it'll keep you up and out of the water so that you can breathe, even if you're unconscious. So it's terrific for keeping you alive, but for most of us, it's not the right one for ours. This is much more typical. Now, this is a real old version. At this point, if anybody owns a life jacket that has a plastic bag filled with K-pop, probably time to replace it. You're talking about a life jacket that was probably last made somewhere, Jim, Dawn, in the 80s. Did they make a K-pop in the 90s? I doubt it. No, I don't remember. So this has a plastic bag. We took it out. It's full of a natural fiber, and the bag holds air and so forth. The trouble was if you put an ice pick through it, it would eventually deflate. So today, this kind of a life jacket has turned into all foam, closed cell foam. It doesn't absorb water. But that is your most basic jacket. It's the type of thing that you will see 4 of them for $29, 4 of them for $39, something like that on the super duper sale. But it covers the law. It's a life jacket. It will keep people floating. It's a small version of the one we saw before. Yes, it will elevate your head. Most wearers, there's enough flotation here that'll roll you over and keep you face up. Part of a Coast Guard kit, it doesn't mean that the Coast Guard puts these kits together and sells them to you. It means that if you go into Western Marine and all the places, and you just want to go, they go off and put together a kit and they say, okay, here's all the safety equipment you need. And they get flares and they get horns and all kinds of stuff that you need to have on a boat. And they will be included as part of that kit to make you pass the Coast Guard inspection. They put them in because they're inexpensive. Trouble is, they're not real comfortable and poorly they are. We're going to talk about inflatables here in a second. Children's life jacket, you have to match the children's weight to the weight that's listed on the label. They will tell you the weight. That is that child's jacket that I have was so old, it just was listed by a child's height. Now they do by weight. This is the type of life jacket that a type 3, which is what I just held up. It's just called a flotation aid. Yes, it's still a PFD, a personal flotation device, which is what we also call life jackets. But subheading is they just call this a flotation aid. Now the problem is that, yes, they're comfortable, as they say here, but it doesn't elevate your head. You know, it's got the foam all the way around, so it doesn't roll you over onto your back. It's designed for someone who just fell off the boat and is wide awake and can keep themselves upright and tread water for a while. It makes life a little bit easier and more likely that you survive if you're at least wearing this. And that's why I carry them on the boat. I presume if somebody needs them on my boat, it's because they just fell off the boat and I'm coming back to get you. And, or the Coast Guard's coming soon if it's really a disaster. But it's sufficient for and comfortable that if I ask people to get into them, that they're happy to do so and spend the afternoon and the conditions really that tough. Now, There are impact rated ones for high speed, either towing on a tubing or on a jet ski. Notice the 4 straps here, that must be that kind of a jack. Fourth type is you need something throwable. You need a flotation device that's throwable. Now, it can be something as simple as that you just have those square cushions. Oftentimes, they say West Marine, which they advertise the marina, and they got 2 straps on them. It's not going to static and provide some cushioning, but it also floats. Yes, that's technically a throwable aid, and most boats you need a throwable aid on. It could be a life ring like this. Oh, a life ring, literally a lifesaver ring that a larger boat will have in a bracket like this, or a horseshoe board. All kinds of things. For most of us, it's just going to be one of those square cushions. You need something on board that if somebody falls in without a life jacket, you need to throw it. That's something. That falls under the type 4. And then inflatables. Now we're getting to the good stuff. What here we own an inflatable life jacket? Highly recommend. Follow on design. Go buy. You'll see why it's. So, this is I have a brand new one which I left on the boat. This is my old one. I replaced it simply because this didn't have, it was starting to look a little ratty and faded, and it also didn't have the straps that went under, which I wanted, just as an added safety, because there are times when I'm quite far offshore. So, don't know if I got the back straight, pardon me if you look at the back and this book right there. So now we'll go. This is an inflatable life jacket. The way it works is that typically there would be sitting right here a CO2 canister about that long, sitting in the slot. I'll show you one here in a minute. And they can be worked, well, inflatable life jackets can be worked 2 ways. I can either fall in the water and pull back and boom, it will inflate. Or there are types, and this was one, that had a automatic mechanism that if I was out in the pouring rain, the waves were coming over, I'm getting wet, it would not inflate. But if I fell in the water and this was underwater for 4 seconds, it would inflate on its own. So if I am heading off the boat, hit my head almost unconscious, after 4 seconds in the water, it would inflate and bring me right up to the surface. Why do I recommend them? Because they're extremely comfortable. There's nothing to this. They're cool. Why do people not like jackets? Because they're big, they're bulky, they're sick. Oh my God, I gotta get this thing off. Most of it. This to me is like my seatbelts. I now feel weird in my car if I'm not wearing a seatbelt. I hope you do too. When I'm on my boat, I feel weird if I don't have this on. And because I single hand so much by myself, this is a good insurance policy. So always carry it, and I always wear it. Doesn't work, obviously, unless they're inflated. Requires regular maintenance. Yes, once a year, home, I would open it up, and there's an inflation tube. And I would blow it up. Wouldn't use the CO2. Blow it up, balloon it up, and I let it sit 24 hours. And make sure it's still full 24 hours later. Okay, there's no pinpricks, there's no holes in it, it's really all then let the air out, fold it all back up. Once a year, check it, make sure everything's working. Every 4 or 5 years, every 5 or 6 years, I would replace the CO2 cartridge. I know it probably work, I know they're fine, but we're talking about my life. CO2 cartridge is $29. Yep, that's expensive. In 5 years, I would replace it, and I would keep the dates, and get this place to write the dates, so I will know the last time. Not to be used for weak or non-swimmers, because they're big and bulky. Shouldn't be used on anybody under 16 or under 80 pounds. Again, they're designed for adults, good people. Then don't use them for water impact sports like a jet ski. And clearly you can't wear them under clothing, because if you got a jacket on over this and it wants to explode, It's not gonna work very well. They're comfortable, they're practical. There are such things as buoyant suits. That would be for people who really are offshore. A sailboat harness. This has two D-rings. If things really got nasty, I have a tether with a big hook that hooks on here, and I can hook it on a place in my boat. Thankfully, I've never been in a situation where I felt the need to get it out. I tried very hard not to be out there all kind of weather. There are also hybrids where you can now get an inflatable, which is basically part of a foul weather jacket, so it's got a little bit of warmth to it. Looks like a regular jacket, but on the surface of it, it's not going to be so thick. So if you're out there a lot in the spring and fall, fishing or whatever, it's really cold, they give you both the hybrid gives you both the warmth of the jacket plus the. All life jackets must be serviceable. We talked about this. Zippers work, straps work, no rips, no tears, label readable. Replace after extended exposure to water or weather. You know, as long as it works, as long as everything works on it, and you can read the label, I question whether you need to do that. Whatever keeps you happy and you feel safe. All right, so inflatables. I asked around the club and I said, so who's got an inflatable that they've had for a lot of years and they really want to replace the cartridge? And they got to replace the cartridge anyway. Would you give it to me so we don't throw away the old cartridge? So I have an inflatable from somebody else. And I would just love somebody to come on. Set it on. Okay, we have like one up. So snap it together. Now this is a little newer than mine. I'm not going to bother tightening it up quite yet. But what this has is a clear plastic pocket, and we can look inside where the business end is, and we can see a little in the window. We can see a little bit of green. You can't see it from where you are. If it was red, it would mean just by looking at it, you could tell, oh, there's no cartridge. Well, the cartridge has been spec. That's the thing. But if the cartridge is in and it hasn't been opened up, you get the green showing through this little window. So what we have inside again, we'll set this off. We'll open this up. So there's that CO2 cartridge I was talking about. Right? There is, he's going to pull on this. There's a lever and the thing that's going to puncture that. And if all goes well, this thing's going to blow up in about 3 or 4 seconds, become very large. This one's also nice. It has a little zipper and a pocket on it. And sure enough, the fellow has his whistle tied in. Okay.
Is there a battery for the light?
There is no light. You should carry a light if you're up there and thinking about that. Yeah.
So the green is just a indicator.
When you pull it, that's going to turn red. And it's just because the lever has moved and it's going to switch to red. It's not a light. Okay? So when you're ready, you give that a hard pull and we'll see what happens with an inflatable light jacket. Pretty cool, huh? That will keep you afloat. This is why, however, we tell people that little kids should be in that. It is basically, if you do the backstory, it's cold. But just that fast, you will have an instant life jacket. Okay? Very good. Thank you. I'm glad it worked. We did have one. Can I get you out of there? Sometimes you can't press it. And once again, oh yeah, this thing is cold. Let's see if we get you out of there. Then we'll pass this around so everybody can see it, feel it, and see the red. Yeah, so we'll send that around.
So Joe, once that has inflated, you need to replace the cartridge, right?
Yeah, yes. Right. Like Craig did that, so he'll have to replace the cartridge in that. So, again, you can inflate that. If for some reason you're in the water and you pull that and nothing happens, it has the inflation tube and you can inflate it by your mouth and get it up to that. That's also the way you want to do it when you're testing the drone. So these things can be expensive. The ones with the manual pull like that are the cheapest. If you want the auto inflation like mine, they add another 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks. You add more straps to them, you add more bells and whistles to them and so forth. Yes, they can get quite expensive. They can be up over 200 bucks, pushing toward 300. Notice, by the way, also the color on that and the reflective tape on the front, 2 pieces of reflective tape if you're out there at night. And of course, the color is very, very, very visible if anybody's out there searching for you.
When you all done, you're out of the water.
All right, how do you deflate them? So you can take a cap off and you push a pen in there. And then you pull it all up and put it in the cartridge.
Is the manual inflator on the left side?
It happens to, I think on most of these, every one I've ever seen, they're on the right, as you put it on your right side.
I mean the hose.
The hose is on the left. Okay. Now, you're near Foxborough, Patriot Place. Bass Pro Shops. Front page. Flyer scanning. My dates, March 10 to March 30. Inflatable life vest, $59.97. That's about as cheap as I've ever seen. Through March 30th at Bass Pro Shops. Yes, sir.
Another page in there, they have them for 10 bucks more and they're automatic on page 10.
Oh, you know what? I noticed that. Was it only 10?
Yeah,
Page 10. Page 8.
that's a great buy. I haven't seen an automatic one down below $100.
You know what? You're right. They do. They have the auto inflatable life vest, $69.
Yeah.
So I would highly recommend you run the Bass Pro, make your first boating investment and get inflatable life jackets. And then every time you go out on the boat, wear them. The first 3 days you're out on the boat with a life jacket, it's gonna be, well, this is a little weird, but you will quickly figure out they do not impede you, they are not difficult to wear at all. Now,
Would you recommend getting those for the passengers, all passengers, or just for the captain and the first mate?
if I know people who have spent the money to get them for everybody, I think that's a great idea.
I do that because I want people to wear them.
Right.
It'll guarantee that people will wear them if you ask them to.
I have not, I have, being on a sailboat, things move a little slower. We're in a cockpit all the time, we're not doing 30 miles an hour, so the chances of losing somebody overboard are really slim in my boat. So I say, try these on, we'll put them away, we'll be fine. And you know what, in 20 years of sailing, I've never been in a situation where I felt the need or anybody's asked on the because I felt unsafe. So that's been my decision. I would certainly say, we don't deal with this. Tell everybody, come on. Good thing to do.
So you wear what?
I wear mine all the time, and in fact, these paper clip, I'm gonna start, I'm gonna bury you guys in articles that I cut up. And I'm gonna hand these around, not to worry now. When you go home tonight, put them in the throne room. And when you're sitting with nothing to do for 5 minutes, pick them up and read them. It's just reinforcement for some of the reasons why things should be done and reinforce what we learned here. So I'm gonna take one and pass them around. Any extras when we're all done, these will go the other way. Everybody gets one of each. I do something a little strange, but I convinced a lot of people. I'm the teacher who wears the life jacket. And so for years, Once I'm in, I'm fine. Get these stupid things on, get them over like that. Still isn't the way to solve.
Even harder if you're swimming.
Well, that's exactly it.
Yeah, then if you're swimming and trying to stay afloat, that's trying to put one on.
Yeah. This is all just a-
By the way, you also, if you're on lakes, the marine patrols are at. They typically, I'm on Sebago, I go on Sebago. They have a high performance boat, 2 people in it. And they cruise around, one with binoculars. And I know they circled around me once I was stopped, and my grandkids wanted to go swimming, they had like jackets and everything. And they happened to be on the boat. And, okay, check, 1 mile, I thought, a mile or so away as I'm heading back. There they are, tied up. to another pond. So probably the best guess was they had kids aboard in those jackets. But I just give you fair warning, you know, you don't, wherever you are, Coast Guard does the same thing. They're observing, but, you know, I saw it on the lake, seen it there, seen it around the lake, so just give you a heads up what happens. So, by the way, you get a fine, and it's between 50 and $100 for a jacket you don't have. So you get 4 people and 3 jackets, it's somewhere between 50 and $100. And there's no question you get the fine. You know, so.
Cheaper to buy a jacket.
Cheaper to buy jackets, yeah. And so if they do come aboard, these jackets only count in your life jacket count. If you're wearing them. So if you have 4 people aboard, and you have 3 of these, and 1 of these, somebody better have this on. If it's in the locker with the other 3, it doesn't count. Because they have to have it on in order for the Coast Guard to say it counts as a watch. Now, if you've got 4 people on board, and you've got 4 of these, automatically you're good. Whether you wear them this or not, they don't care. If you've got 4 of these and 4. This is one of the life jackets. Only gonna last forever. Mike, you had your hand up while you were there. I answer your question.
I figured it wasn't that dangerous, but I was wondering if the inflatable life jackets, I know it'll fit around this area if you put it on, but is it possible it's ever too tight around this area to fit on some people?
Oh, up in here,
Like when it inflates.
when it inflates.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're big and they're bulky and, you know, well, they won't make your head pop off. That's the good news.
Yeah, I figured it wasn't too hard pressure.
But as I say, it's not the kind of thing you're gonna try to swim, because there's so much out here, best you can do is. They're designed to keep you fine. You fall in the water, it's an emergency, they're gonna keep you upright at the time. To prove to you that they're comfortable, I'm gonna spend the rest of our next 5 minutes wearing this thing. I always do, I wear it every night. And I do it just to prove to you that if I could teach class and it doesn't bother me in the slightest, that I can wear it, you can certainly find out that it's easy to wear. And full range of motion. Aren't hot, it's not enough here that causes me to get hot in summer. I never find myself complaining about this thing. The only thing I don't do anymore is I used to wear this with the canister in it. It didn't happen here, but I was on my boat making sandwiches wearing this. Well, I caught this thing and went off while I was down below. So I now wear this empty just in case I should happen to catch gas, but it won't fire off the canister. All right, so I think that's it for life jackets, and we're about at our break. I can't tell you often enough. Oh, the other thing about buoyancy in a life jacket, go to page 22, and they will tell you about buoyancy, and the number 1 at the top of the list, that was the big Coast Guard type. It says 33.0. What that means is that if you attached 33 pounds of lead weights to the life jacket, drop it in the water, it would still barely float. So it gives you 33 pounds of buoyancy. The number 3 inflatable like I'm wearing gives me about 22 pounds of buoyancy. Things like this give about 15 pounds of buoyancy. I could attach a 15-pound weight to that, or it should be able to drop it in the water, and it was just barely floating. So that's what buoyancy means. Obviously, the more buoyancy, the farther out of the water we're going to keep. For those of you who might be thinking about doing other things, being fishing or paddling or jet ski or what have you, on page 25, they sort of talk about all the different types of life jackets for all the different activities. All right. Oh, and were there any extras on those things that I passed around? They got just enough? Okay. And the other thing is that I'll pass around and start to use around is how to choose a life jacket. It's a Coast Guard jacket. I also throw my life jackets for others who might think that. All right. We got 5 minutes. I need. All right. I need 3 more volunteers up here for about 5 minutes. It won't hurt. You all come back alive. Am I free? Okay, James. 2 more. Yeah, you've already been up. 2 more people. Come on, 3 people. Okay, 2. 1 more. That's fine. I'll free. Come on up.
Watch out for the cables.
Yeah, just watch the cords. Okay. So we have Sydney. Wait a minute. I'm trying to learn names. And Melissa? Oh, right. Gotta check my cheat sheet here. All right. So 3 of us are out on my 25-foot center console. We've left from the North River in Situate, and we've gone up the middle of Cape Cod Bay, and we've done fishing for the day. It's a beautiful Saturday in July, and we're coming back in the North River at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. End of the day, we caught a few fish, and the wind has come up, and it's blowing about 15 miles an hour from the east toward the North River. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the North River, but it is just absolutely notorious for a sandbar. The river comes down, bringing silt, pushes up in the salt water, slows down, and drops all the silt about 100 yards off the mouth of the river. The spit. Off the spit. And it builds up in the easterly, it's blowing from Provincetown toward the shore, out in the middle of the bay, the waves are 1.5 feet high. Big deal. They roll in and they come to that sandbar, and all of a sudden they build up and get higher and they start breaking. And all of a sudden those little waves are now this high or higher. And an awful lot of boaters have suddenly not realized, because they're looking at the wrong side of the wave, around shore, oh, you can see the wave breaking, and we're going from the other side. It's not clear that these things have got built up and are breaking. Well, I have been paying attention, and I'm wearing this. And have been all day. You guys know what the life jackets are, but I didn't have it. But you know that they're in the lazarette. That's the lazarette. And all of a sudden, I see the waves breaking in front of me, and I panic. And the first thing I do is I throttle all the way back. I was scared out of my patooties, and I just had a laundry problem. And as I slowed down, a wave came up over the back and swamped the boat, and we are now suddenly in very cold water up to our knees. And there's another wave coming, and the engine just quit. And now we've turned sideways, and I'm guessing in 2 or 3 waves, we're going to go over. We need to get life jackets on. So you know where they are, but you've got about 20 seconds before we're in the water. And you've got to get life jackets on. Who's got to watch it the second hand? Anybody besides me? I will. Mike. James. Mike's and James, give me both.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to have you time it, and so I'm going to, you give them a ready, set, go, and see how they do in 20 seconds before we cast them. So I am stupid enough not to have you try these things on. And see if you can get them on right by the time we turn over. Just to increase the intensity, how many seconds left? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're over, we're in the water. Okay. You did fine. You came real close, but you got encountered a mess when you pulled it out of there because you hadn't tried it on before. All right. Now, let's do the opposite. Let's take it off, put it back on you. Let's unsnap this. No wonder you couldn't get it. And see, we're encountering one of the problems with these right here.
It's not serviceable.
This one isn't serviceable. All right, we're gonna give you a different one. We got a different one in there. Let's see what else we got. Real cheap, we'll give you this one. This one may not be serviceable either. There we go. Boy, this is why they use them on the just. All right, let's see if I think we're gonna have to loosen some straps here.
I think you're demonstrating now why you have to do this in advance.
Exactly. All right, so there. No, we gotta do this. This is one. Snap. All right, you two take out your flight jackets. James is going to be running first, so yours is going down the bottom. You know, we'll see. And we'll put yours right on top. We'll take yours off. We'll get that up and snap. Without losing a fingernail. All right. Now let's see what happens in 20 seconds this time. So yours is going to be the first one. Okay. So now everybody knows what they're on board. James, your job is going to be you pulling on the hammer. Okay? So, you're ready, set, go. Go. Do the countdown every 5 seconds for us. Good. Certain things. Already done, it's a 5. Gosh. And they've all got life jackets. The difference between having tried them on first. And you know, clearly there's no water, we're not about to fall over, there's no seas running and so forth. And it can be very confusing when you have to pull something out that you've never seen before. The reason why you should have, okay, continue. You all did an excellent thing. The reason for having your crew try them the first time. Hopefully, you just brought right up that phone. Hopefully, you know, that we never arrived, but it's like the seatbelt. You wear them because things happen, that's why I okay. We're gonna take a break real quick here. The first few times that I watched this little blur, this video, I thought that it was all set up. I thought that they had people that said, okay, this is what we want you to do when the camera starts rolling. Now I've watched it about 20 times. I'm thinking, you know what? I think they actually walked down to the docks on a nice day, found some folks getting ready to go out on the boats and said, would you help us run a little test? And they went to, what you're gonna see is people on 2 different boats. One of them is 4 adults. One of them has 3 adults, 2 adults, 3 adults, a child, and a dog. And they apparently said to them, what we want to do is what we just did up here. How fast can you guys get on life jackets if we just say, go get the life jackets on? And so you got to see them flip back and forth between 2 different boats. It will be a little tough to figure out that you've switched between boats. But this is what it looked like. So this guy who's in the picture right now with the dark glasses, you're going to find out he's the only one who really knew how to put on a life jacket. He must own the boat. And I'm guessing that's his wife beside him, although we don't know. But, and we can see another fellow way on the left side there behind the glass. He's the 3rd person on board. Here's what they found. different boat. He was fine. He already hit us. What do you mean there isn't one for me? That's what you say. He's like, what do I do with this?
Is there a regulation to protect the dog?
I don't think so. But you know, again, it's funny to look at, but you don't want that happen on your boat at the wrong time. That's the whole thing. Okay. All right, so now we're going to talk about the worst possible, I think probably one of the worst things that can happen is you end up with a fire on your boat. Clearly one of the scariest things. In your car at home, you at least can build one away from the fire. When you're on the boat, that's really tough. So we're going to talk about that there are 3 types of fires: trash, paper and wood, gas, oil, liquids, grease, flammable liquids, and finally electrical equipment. And what we're going to talk about is that fire extinguishers carry different ratings to be able to put out different types of fires. If an extinguisher has an A rating, it's made to put out paper and wood. If that's all it is, it's probably just a large metal air pressure refillable that just has water in it. It's just made to put out wood fires. If it's made to put out gasoline, oil, it's going to have a B rating. And finally, if it's made to put out an electrical fire, things are shortened out in the electrical panel, then it'll have a C rating. Now, a little mnemonic you can use to remember which is which is which. If wood, paper burns up, what's the residue that's left behind? Ash. A for ash. So that's an A rating, is just wood and paper. If liquids get really hot, what do? They boil. So type B, boil for, you can remember, is for the liquids, the gasoline, the oil, the diesel fuel, and so forth, that are extinguishers made for that kind of. Electrical equipment, electricity, it's a current, C for current. So if it's got a C rating, it's made to work on electrical equipment. So when you buy an extinguisher, this one has a BC rating on it. So it's made to put out the 2 on the right, and so forth. So if you're buying them for your boat, make sure, again, it says Coast Guard approved. Most are, but go look in the fine print for Coast Guard rating. And the Coast Guard says that you are required to have a B, I think it's a BC, I know at least a B. Is it a BC? Yeah, it's been 3 years since I've taught this. The Coast Guard says you must have a BC rating because, frankly, the most common type of fire on a boat is what? It's old wiring on a boat, or somebody who has put in new gizmos and hasn't put in the right wiring, or forgot to do the fusing, or thought they knew what they were doing, just when they didn't. And the fire started because it was short. So you're required to have the BC rating on your fire extinguisher. Now, how many? Depends upon the size of your boat. So here's where we get into the first issue about, okay, size of boat. Go to page 27, put a big star on that blue table at the top. Make sure you know that table. Fire extinguishers and life jackets, lots of questions on the test. So if your boat has a motor and it's under 26 feet in length, then you need a single, you know, out here in the book, they say you just need ratings on that table. I think it's smart to have a BC, but they just say a B1. Also, B1 is the size. This is a B1 size fire extinguisher. You're required to have one of these on your boat if your boat is less than 26 feet long. If you're over 26 feet, then you have to have two of these. Or you can have a B2, which is this size. That's 10, that is 10 pounds of suppressant. This has 5 pounds. Yes?
Oh, wait, never mind, you just answered the question.
So these are the types of things that most of us have around our houses. Yes, many of you have these in your house. When you go home today, I want you to do something for us. What's them up? Take them out from wherever they are, dust them off, clean them off. Check the gauge. Gauge should be reading E. This one is old. It's now pointing in the red. It's got some pressure. I'm sure yours is fully pressurized. It says E. It says it's in the green area. The other thing is, look at the shape. There's powder in it. Essentially, it looks like baking soda. Okay? And the powder should be loose. But if it's been sitting on a bracket in the closet of your house or in the back of the closet for years, if it's been on your boat in the same place for years, and you've got any kind of a boat, a powerboat, a sailboat, those bounces, and the powder, you say, well, that's going to shake it up. Well, no, or it may just cause it to settle into a foam at the bottom. And you would be very pleasantly surprised if you were to fire a home or a fire on the boat, and you go to fire it off, and there's this clump that isn't moving, and nothing comes out of the spiral. And so you can shake it and you can feel the powder. And if you don't feel it, then you turn it upside down and you go find something very, very hard. Food is a wonderful thing. Go outside to it. Bang, bang, bang. See if that doesn't loosen it up. I'm going to pass this around. As I shake this, I can definitely feel the powder going back and forth. Comes around, you have to shake. So you feel it's like a fast storm feel. In my life, in my fire extinguishers at home. Okay? So the big difference between these two, if you look at that one, that's got a black plastic handle. That means it's a disposable fire extinguisher. Once you fire them off, they're dead, throw them away. This one, you know, is metal on the top. It also has an old inspection tag. These are refillable, rechargeable. They can open them up, refill them, repressurize them, put an inspection tag back on, and send them back out for use. Okay? And this could be done with it as well.
What do you go to get recharged?
There you go, Google fire extinguisher companies, and there are all kinds of them.
And the difference between 1 and 2 is volume.
Yes. Now, on my boat, I'm required to have 2 of those in my boat. Every 4. I have them in 4 different locations of the boat. And I have a diesel. Diesel is not nearly as dangerous on the boat as gasoline. Gasoline is what causes the problems with the night studios. But I have one, and that's one of the things that I show everybody when they come on my boat. Yes, how to start and stop the engine. Yes, we put on life jackets. I train somebody how to use the radio, and then I point out here are the 4 fire extinguishers. Oh, yeah. 20 years we've never actually reached one back up. My wife, I train regularly both at home and on my boat how to use the fire extinguisher. I don't try to train the people on my boat how to use the fire extinguisher. There are limits to how bad I don't scare them through. So these things over here. So know that you need these as a minimum, but more is always better. If you're buying them, must be Coast Guard approved. Oops, you know that. So that Coast Guard approved, look for it on the label somewhere that says Coast Guard approved. Even anywhere a fire hazard is expected, the gasoline engines, you use a B rating, but also that's for diesel engines. Any diesel or gas engine, you need a B rated fire extinguisher. And you need a class B one, which is the size. So don't get the two confused for the smallest boats. So if you had a boat under 26 feet long, you only need one. And as you go up in size, you need more. Does anybody, and again, they must be readily accessible. And the boat length determines the class of a fire extinguishers that you get when you go on board. Has anybody ever fired off one of those little fire extinguishers? Anybody ever had these little do? Don, you stop putting your hand up, Don, you don't know. Must be tough.
Yeah, when I was in college, we did like facilities stuff, putting out fires.
Okay. So you can tell us then. Usually I ask the question and nobody knows the answer, so we take it. Well, but I'll let you, we'll cut right to the chase. That's any idea, you remember? How long did it last? Press it and just let it spray. How long does it last? Do you remember? All right. So your three choices are, take a vote. 10 seconds, 30 seconds, minute and a half. Everybody who thinks it lasts 10 seconds, put your hand. Okay, everybody who thinks they last 30 seconds. Everybody who thinks they last a minute and a half. That's all they last, is 10 seconds. Now, I'll warn you. It is amazing how far stuff comes out. And frankly, how much of it comes out. There's a lot of even some snow like that. It is rather amazing. It's like, well, that doesn't much longer. And yes, if you were a roar and engine rock fire, it would be much. However, just a word of caution. You're on your boat and you actually have a galley cook stove and something on the stove catches fire. There's been a fuel leak or spilled alcohol from alcohol stove. You've got a pretty good fire going. And there's a little liquid that's burning. Stand back. Because if I was to fire off one of these here, it's likely that it would hit the tripod with the camera down by you folks. It would probably fire that far or nearly that far. I mean, it isn't 3 feet, these things fire distance. And if you're aiming at a fire that's in front of you and there's lots of liquid, you could literally take it and spray the liquid everywhere. So be aware that they can pack quite a punch, which is a good thing, because it allows you to stand back from the big fire and try to put it out. There's a dry chemical in them. Stand corrected. I haven't done this classically. 2.5 pounds, 5 pounds, and then even bigger is 10 pounds. So that whoops. So 2.5 pound, 5 pound, which is the two I have here, and then some of these are 10 pound here. Not six. I don't know what those are. Those are really big.
Joe, do you have the refillable ones in your boat? No.
No. Now, the other thing that's interesting, I always wondered about these little gauges. They look like they cost about 15 cents. And I've often looked at them and I said, I wonder if I want. Years ago, we had a safety demonstration down in the guys who do safety work for the fishermen, who train the fishermen how to survive at sea. And one of the things they talk about is fire extinguishers. And they train them and they fire off fire extinguishers all the time. And they recharge fire extinguishers. They fire small life jackets on that. I asked them about these. I said, so you guys are dealing with fire extinguishers all the time. I said, how accurate are those? He says, I've been doing this for 20 plus years. He says, if as a fire extinguisher, no matter what the age, if the gauge reads green, it's got a full charge. He says, I've never seen gauges to not read correctly. That's good. So apparently, the under the gauges in spite of their own life is worth 15 cents. On your boat, be careful. Wasps, mud dauber wasps, low to build nests. Check the nozzle. Make sure it doesn't look like it's full of dirt. On your boat again, make sure you get it to shake it like we just did. Something brand new. New Coast Guard fire extinguisher requirements just came out going into effect in April. For years, people said, well, how long should you keep them? And people said, well, you should keep them 5 years. You should keep them 30, and nobody really had a good answer for it. I think here in the book somewhere, they say that they should be replaced. They hope to replace them after, I don't know, I guess the number was. New Coast Guard regulations, and I'll pass this around again to take all of these. Both rechargeable and non-rechargeable. Older than 12 years old from manufacture date are no longer considered good and serviceable and should be replaced with a newer fire extinguisher. The brand new extinguishers that have been coming out recently, not this one, have a date on the bottom. They'll say 17, 18, 19, 20. Well, that's the last 2 years of the date that was manufactured. This is so old it doesn't have it, but if I look and look and look and look and look in the really fine print, I finally found over here, microscopic, it says 1991. So somewhere there'll be a manufacturing date on them. They now want to come on board and see that they are less than 12 years old. If they're 12 years old, they must be disposed of by December of the year that they turn 12 years old. So that's a brand new check the fire extinguishers on the boats. So we get to take one of these. Some boats, maybe some of you have this in your engine compartment, have an automatic fire suppressant system built in. Anybody have one of those in their engine compartment? Okay, so that goes a long way toward satisfying many of the requirements. You notice in that table, it talks about on the far right with an approved fixed system. And depending upon the size, it reduces the need for these guys. One of the bad things about these is that if you have an electrical fire and it suddenly smoke and sparks are coming out of your fuse panel and so forth, and you spray it and you put out the fire, unfortunately, the powder that comes out of these things is murder on the wires themselves, and you're likely going to have to call in a competent
Electrician.
to rewire major portions of the road. Expensive fire. So that very much of this power is murder on electrical wires. Okay, where would you put it? Engine area, not physically in the engine room. Fire starts, you're not going to be able, in the engine room, you're not going to be able to get to the fire extinguisher. Other obvious places. Near the stove, near, not on top of the stove, somewhere fire starts on the stove, you want to be over here reaching for a fire extinguisher, not reaching across the stove. Living quarters, I keep one in my cockpit. Easy reach, mounted properly, checked, ready to go. They say right here, 7-year life, so the Coast Guard just said 12. No, gauges in red, yeah. That, I can't, well, you know what, I can barely see the yellow needle. It's just really pointing to the red. So that would have to come out of space. How do you use them? We talk about the pass system. I'm not going to fire the sucker off, but this is missing its safety pin. I put a paper clip in here so you couldn't squeeze it. Pass system. Hold safety pin. The safety pin is there so that you don't set it off by accident. Okay, as long as the safety pin is in, I cannot squeeze the handle. Okay, you don't want to be carrying somebody set it off. So when it's time, you pull the safety pin, throw it on the floor like that. Aim it at the base of the fire, squeeze the trigger, and then sway back and forth. But you aim at the base of the fire, not at the top. And you squeeze, and keep sweeping until the fire is completely out, and then wait and make sure it doesn't flare up again, and you don't need to fire off another method.
And you do bursts, or what you do is steady stream.
Whatever it takes to put the damn fire out. If you got a fire on the boat, you want that sucker. As quick as you can.
You only have 10 seconds.
Yeah, well, and then you gotta have another one ready to go to back it up. That's why you carry an extra. Fires on boats are very scary. Oops, all right. Now, look at fire extinguishers again. You need to almost memorize this section on fire extinguishers. It's short, but know that table 2-3 on the top of 27, and be very, very familiar with ABC and the requirement to have is only to have a V type that will put out gas fires, diesel fuel, liquids, but it's wise to have a BC that will also take care of electrical.
Joe, are there any requirements in terms of disposing of these things once they go into the red? Are
I
there,
think the easiest thing is probably to simply take them out somewhere safe, fire them off, and then drop them in the trash.
so it's not a bad idea actually to practice how to use these once they're kind of expired. It's not a bad idea just to try to practice it.
One of the things that we do, one of the X courses that we teach is boat handling, and we cover 6 topics that are in here. And while fire extinguishers and flares are not one of them, I've taught that pieces of that course in the past, and I have taken a night and I have taken people outside with permission from the police department. I'm going to talk about flares here in a minute, and there's all kinds of things that we practice having everybody fire off a flare that you keep on your boat as a distress signal. We're talking about that next. This is fake, by the way. This one's fake. It's not that. But practice. This is what the state police use on the highway. When somebody breaks down, they light a flare. It's one of these. Okay. But I get permission from the police, and we pick a place outside. And we have everybody come with a bunch of old flares that have been given, and everybody gets to practice lighting a flare. Again, before some emergency, another one will not before. And the second thing is that we have a pretty big aluminum stainless steel bucket that you put ice and cans of soda in that barbecue. And I put a small fire going in it, and we grab a couple of fire extinguishers and we practice with fire extinguishers. How many would be interested in an extra night here in Walpole that have fun making things blow up and burn? Blow up. And they offer that. I got a second class starting in April, probably be sometime in May or June or something. We can set up a night. Those that can make it come, and those that don't. So we'll try to schedule something like that here in this town. Please right next door, so they can tell us where they'd like us to go and meet. As long as they know we're doing it, so they don't get any reports about what are all those funny flares I see around the street. It's just that serious stuff. Okay. It's good experience to have done this, because most people have never used a fire extinguisher, and certainly have never used a flare. Okay. Now, so make sure you have the minimum number of fire extinguishers, and more is more better. Any questions on those? All right. You are required to have distress signals on your boat. Something nasty happens, and you've got to summon help, and you can see boats over there, you can see people over there, and you want to let them know that you're in trouble. How are you going to do that? So you're required to carry certain things on the boat that will let people know, or should let people know, that you are having a problem. On the bottom of page 29, they give you some examples of signals that you might use on your boat. Pyrotechnic, which include flares that I just held up, orange smoke signals, things that you can fire off into the sky, parachute flares, smoke, and then yes, even simple things like special flags and distress signals. Oh, bag of goodies. So, if you're on coastal waters, you're on the Great Lakes, any large body of water that is over 2 miles wide, you are required to have visual distress signals. If you're on a little lake somewhere, or a narrow river. And that's the only place you go. You can't get outside and so forth. Then they figure you can't ever be more than a mile from shore. No matter where you go, you can't be more than a mile because the body of water is only 2 miles long. So, okay, you don't need visual distress signals. For the rest of us that might end up on salt water, you gotta have distress signals with you. Now, the minimum the Coast Guard says is a flare that can be seen daytime and nighttime. So it's a red flare that can be seen daytime or nighttime, and you have to have 3 of these on board. Now, the Coast Guard says that's the limit. Right, and you can find packages 4 typically at West Marine for about $25 to $35 if it's the right signal. It covers the whole. The idea is that it's red, so it gets shows up in supposedly bright sunny day in July, and certainly it shows up at night. But it turns out that other things work actually a little better under certain circumstances. So yes, we'll go through a few of these. You can use VDS, visual distress signals, pyrotechnics, things that burn. Red flare is good for day or night. Orange smoke, it turns out, is even better. In daytime, the problem with these is that these give off the same amount of light as a 75-watt light. Now let me ask. You're in trouble on the boat. You're a couple miles offshore. Do you think if you waved a 75-watt light bulb, you're going to notice it? I mean, what are the chances if you're onshore 2 miles away, you're going to notice somebody out in the water 2 miles away waving a 75-watt light bulb, even if it's red, and that's what these are. These meet the minimum requirements. Useless. What we these are designed to attract health that's close to you. Okay, if this is about a half mile away, maybe you'll see this. But if you're hoping that somebody's going to see it 2, 3, 4, 5 miles away, then you're going to see it from the video. Now, you can also get, this is the same thing. This puts out orange smoke. It puts out some. Again, those guys who showed us how the fire extinguishers work, and asked them about that, did show us how to use these and how much smoke. It was kind of perfect. It really was. Again, somebody would have to be awfully close, looking in the right direction to notice this stuff. But it's better perhaps than just the regular flare. In daytime. Smoke won't be any good at night. So if you had this smoke for daytime, so if you had the smoke for the daytime, well, that's fine, but you still need something at night. So you have to carry that maybe plus this. There are aerial meteors and flares. Now, many people probably are familiar with some sort of a kit like this. Anybody have these on adults? Nobody? Oh, food. Okay. So these are very common. These are a Orion flare gun. You don't need a license for these. These just open up, pull the shell out, put it in, close it, and fire. They did a demo with these. They loaded one in. We had about 20 of us, and the fellow walked down near the water, and the distance from the water was probably from here to the far side of the hallway up there. So he was only about 50, 60 feet away. It was a bright sunny day, and he went down the water and he held the gun up and he said, "Ready?" And he pulled the trigger and we could hear it go, and 20 of us stood there and said, "Where is it?" We were stunned. We were looking for it. We knew when he was going to shoot it. He was 50 feet away. We couldn't see a freaking thing. Absolutely useless. Absolutely useless. We were stunned because all of us were sitting there saying, "I have on my boats for years. I'm figuring this is going to save me." These were handheld kind of flares that I bought for my boat the first year. Then read about them, but I figured out they didn't work. These are replacement shells. Now,
Joe, are those the other bigger flares, are they not handheld?
so that fires, that's a handheld, that's a handheld. Now, there are flares like these. This is a rocket. This will do what this does, only this is industrial storm. This you have to know the directions, take it apart, and you pull something and it really, this will go up about 250 feet, this will go up about 1,000 feet. And then you can buy things like this that get even a little bigger, and when they get up to 1,000 feet, out pops a parachute and it drifts down, swinging. And they last about 2.5 to 3 minutes. Right? These last about 2 minutes at max. These last about 4 seconds.
So small, you recommend those kinds? You don't recommend those for what?
Useless. Now there are canisters like this that you can buy. You pop them off, you pull the tab, throw it in the water. These things pour out smoke, so much smoke, and they float, and they can be getting wet, and they pour out the smoke, and they pour out the smoke. Now that's good. That's about $90. So there's all kinds of things that you can buy. What should you buy? It goes back to buying a boat. What should you buy for a boat? Well, it depends upon how you're going to use the boat. What should you buy for safety equipment? It depends upon how you use the boat. If you know that you're going to spend your entire life inside Boston Harbor and up the Charles River, okay, you don't need an aerial flare that goes 1,000 feet in the air. Okay? But if you intend that, yes, gee, I'm going to go out fishing somewhere between Provincetown and Plymouth, at which point, even on a beautifully clear day, it's either damn hard or impossible to see shore, then maybe, just maybe, 50, 60 bucks for one of these. You don't want to wish you owned one when it gets really nasty. That's the decision you have to make. 3 of these, what the Coast Guard says, but is that really what you want? It depends upon where you go and what you have.
What do you own, Joe?
And so because there are times when I go up to Maine, I do an overnight flight. And we go from essentially Provincetown all the way up to straight up to Camden, Penobscot Bay. And at one point, you get about 30 miles off shore, at which point my radio no longer works. And so, yes, I always carry these for daytime use, but I don't have them here. The other thing that I carry on my boat, because again, the guys in New Bedford demoed them for us, is they then pulled out flares that look just like this, except that they were at a rating of, the technical term, SOLAS, SOLAS, no brand. SOLAS, Safety of Life at Sea Regulations. These are the regulations that have to be that international bodies got together and said, we got to make sure this doesn't happen. And so all of a sudden, commercial ships were required to monitor their radios 24 hours a day. They had to have a certain number of life kits. They had to have both life jacket drills on a daily basis. They had to now carry certain types of flares and rockets and so forth. And I carry also a set of SOLAS flares. Now, again, it's not a brand name, it just means they meet the ratings for safety of life at sea. So they look the same, except for one thing. This puts out the light of a 75-watt light bulb, $810 scientific. The SOLAS flares, instead of costing 4 for 25 bucks, cost about 20 bucks a piece. And I carry 3 of them at 20 bucks a piece along with these, because they're a white flare instead of red, so really be seen at night. during the daytime, the light isn't as good, but they throw out tons of white smoke. Tons of white smoke, which is good. Looks like my boat's burning. But the light from it, instead of being 800 candela, is 15,000 candela. So if I'm out there a long way and I see a boat at a distance, if I fire one off, I want the guy to see it. So I carry through the hose just for hose. So, but the people who head off to Bermuda and places like that, they got cases of this big stuff. They're required to some of these races. They have to have certain safety. It depends. You don't need everything if you're just going to be in Boston Harbor and go on a trail. So up to you what you want to do. So this is one way. Yes, 3 of those are all you need to pass the Coast Guard. If you need more than that, want more than that, certainly get it. Non-pyrotechnic signaling device. You can have a signal mirror. And it works in the daytime when the sun's out and the sun's at the right angle and all that sort of thing. Doesn't work at night, so it still needs something else at night. An orange distress flag, same thing, you need something else at night. Now, coming on strong recently have been electric distress lights. They don't cause fires, they're not fireworks. There's been some discussion about whether they really attract as much attention as pyrotechnics. I won't get into that, but they are making inroads. They have a lot of advantages. One of the things about these flares that you buy, and if you have them on your boat, one of the things the Coast Guard will look at is they have an expiration date. They figure that these things are good for 42 months from the date of manufacture. And so you have to look at your flares and see when these were done. Now, again, this is a fake one. And this says date of fabrication, July of 09, expiration date 42 months later, December of 2012. So if you had these on your boat and they had an expiration date of 2 or 3 years ago, you're going to be in trouble with the Coast Guard. Now, what do you do when you have to replace them? What do you do with the old ones? Keep them someplace separate on the boat. Keep the good ones right out front. When the Coast Guard says, let's see where they are, they're easy to get at. Make sure they're easily accessible. And make sure what you find first are the newest ones. The old ones, keep them in case. We ran tests on these many years ago with people turning in old ones and to see just how old they had to be before they stopped working. We found when they got to about 10 years old, then the chances of them actually igniting after they were 10 years old is slim. Now, what do you do with them after that? It is one of the major problems of the industry. What do you do with old fiberglass boats that nobody wants? Flares, these are considered hazardous material. We don't have a good answer for that. An awful lot of people have 20 of these on a boat or 50 more sitting at home in the garage for a long time because they're buying flares for those. There still is no answer for that. I suppose the answer is if the handhelds flying fire off and not go off fire these off in the air. Suddenly put it out. FAA now, if you find flares in the air, just from the aircraft and so forth. So the air is.
I've found, Joe, that it's a good idea to be careful when you're buying these things on sale, as well as the inflatable life jackets, because the expiration date might be a year from now.
Typically, when you go in the spring, you're absolutely right. I saw that last year. There was a sale at West Marines for flares. And I thought, well, that's a good price. Knowing that, I looked and carefully found the expiration date. They were already a year old. They only had a year and a half, 2.5 years left. Not really.
But you know what happened to me though, and I bought a bunch of the inflatable PFDs, and the manager of the store recognized that there was only a year left before the expiration date of the canister. And he literally gave me 3 extra canisters so that, and he didn't charge me for it and still gave me the sale price. So you got to ask.
Here, a gun that they showed, greater visible distance. I'll disagree with that. Very short burn time. Yes, there are firearms, but you do not need a license. Fire sheet flares have a longer burn time, but they cost a lot more. They look like that. They're big husky things. You'll know them because they're $75 or $100 a piece. Flags, that is specifically an emergency send help flag. And then, of course, the old fashioned, just wave your arms up and down. You know, that's not some movie. I think we all recognize that if we were out there doing that, you'd be fine, right? And you get the signal mirror only if the sun's in the right direction. Okay. I think we're gonna. Let me see if there's anything here. One of the big problems with these handheld flares, we haven't talked about it yet. Come on, you can do it. All right. Oops. All right. This is a demo that shows how to set off a flare. Notice one of the things that he does to do a flare is that, again, this is a dummy. This is like a match. That's the ignition point on the flare. Okay. Under the cap, just like on a book of matches, there's a little piece of sandpaper. And what he does, he doesn't try this one. He puts them together, presses, and then pulls it off under pressure. And that's what ignites these. You'll notice that when he does this. Now, notice that he's got gloves on. Why would he need gloves? Wait until you see what a mess these are and how dangerous these things are. There's no sound for this. Pushes them together. Yes, they might burn for about 2 minutes. Now, what I'd ask you is,
You have your fire extinguisher.
yeah, keep your fire extinguisher handy. Watch the slide dripping off that. That stuff is white hot. If it hits a fiberglass boat, it will melt the boat. If it hits your inflatable Zodiac dinghy, it'll burn a hole right through it. They throw off tremendous slag. What you'd like to do is to take this thing and go, hey, come get me. This stuff would be going all over the place and dropping on you. So what are you forced to do? Hold it over the side of the boat and hold it out sideways. So it drops in the water. God forbid you should do this one. You'd have it dropping on your head and go into the hospital. So these are no beauties, believe me. The soulless flares do not drop any slag. Yes, I can do this all day long. It drops nothing. So yes, they're expensive, but they have a lot of advantages. All right, we're going to stop here, and next week we'll start with sound producing equipment. Before you go, a couple of things. I'm going to hand around these things. We've been talking about how good the flares work or don't work. This was Cody's Foundation did some tests. If you're really a geek, you want to get into what works and what doesn't. And then wonderful little article that will get your attention. Gasoline engines bring thee closer to God than you realize. And it talks about being so careful. Oh, we haven't got to the school yet. That's really my refueling. We'll save that for later. Refueling. Let's test fire. Sure, we'll throw this one in, send this around, and more about how the squadron, this organization years ago at a national level, mocked up the stern of a boat with an engine compartment and decided to run a test and see how hard it was to put the fire out. What did it take? Boy, did they get surprised. It almost killed itself. So take one of those and pass it around. I put an article up here. I'll try to split up again next week. Be aware, for those of you who might be in the habit of going to a gas station and filling up the outboard tanks in your boat, that 10% ethanol is bad enough in your outboard these days. It can raise havoc with a lot of old engines and fuel tanks. Now they're talking about going to 15%. I don't think it's happening in this state, but if it's out of state, 15% ethanol in most road engines is a death sentence. So read this article. And I think it's like a little humor. I'll put this back up, but I'll read the little article at the bottom. There's a cartoon in an article. They don't have anything to do with each other. Come on up and see the cartoon. Hopefully you'll get it. Winterizing the wrong way. A man in Minnesota was planning to spend a weekend hunting. As he was heading out the door with his buddies, this is a true story, by the way, from US Magazine. As he was heading out the door with his buddies, his wife asked him when he was going to winterize the boat. The man put his arm around her and said, "Fine, I think of it as our boat. Would you do it?" So she drove down with the boat, poured kerosene in the bilge, and tossed in a match. 2 points. The wife's winterizing shortcut created more problems than it solved. Insurance didn't cover the damage. And shocker, the couple is no longer married. There's also a cute cartoon up here that will get you thinking. All right, so we're right at 9 o'clock.